So I'd like to start by introducing David, and David's going to be talking about measuring what matters for real-time engagement. So please join the stage, David.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just got to get hooked up here. All right, so today I'm going to talk about the value of emotions in business. And before I do that, though, I want to go way back in time, about a year or two ago, when customers really started to look at social media analysis tools to try and gain a perspective that they may have had as they were looking at social media technology. Can you press the audio?
When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you.
This, unfortunately, is what we really have in many client environments today. Expectations haven't necessarily been met as it relates to social media analysis technologies. And when we look at why, it's pretty obvious. We see this kind of every day when we walk into a new client environment. The analysis tools that are out there are riddled with false positives. Unfortunately, the vehicle to resolve those in many cases is really adding human moderation to the process. Tools are often criticized for being complex and difficult to use. When we want to try and do a broader analysis, sometimes we have to reach into existing data systems that are out there and extract data, and it can be very complicated and time-consuming. We just did an analysis for a telecommunications company, and they gave us 280,000 posts that they had resident that they wanted us to specifically analyze, and they had to write 281,000 record queries in order to capture that information. It cost them, I think it was just over $10,000 to pull the data, and then we had to do some manipulation to it as well. It's not really something that becomes scalable or something that customers are willing to accept. Also, what we find is in many cases that the findings that we deliver to clients are the obvious things. And I had a CEO of a company tell me recently, I'm willing to pay for anything as long as you're not telling me what I already know. I'm more interested in the things that I don't know. And that's what I'm looking to you and companies like yours to deliver to us. And of course, there are solutions that allow us to understand how we can capture value in data that we have inside our business. But in many cases, it looks more like a project-based solution where we hire a series of consultants, highly competent, that come in and they analyze data and they produce an analysis and deliver a narrative that we can then use to project back onto our business. And that is a really valuable solution. But it's expensive. And these analyses can cost somewhere between $50,000 and $250,000. And what we find is only the largest companies are really capable of affording these types of technologies or have the resources to actually pull it off. So let's look at what it was like and what it is like for companies to make a decision as it relates to social media analysis tools today. And this is not uncommon, right? When somebody comes in, they paint this great picture of, hey, it's really simple. We're going to go out and we're going to pull all this data in. We're going to put a thumbs up or thumbs down indicator on it, and then we're going to push that information to the appropriate person in the organization to take action on. Unfortunately, you really can't get there from here, because when you abstract information up, you lose a lot in the interpretation. And so what companies have had to do is they've actually had to implement these concepts of what's called a human moderation factory. Most of them are actually in-sourced for a lot of companies that we talk to. So they go out, they buy technology, and then what they do is they hire 50 to 100 people that actually read everything that comes out of these systems so they can then use the Microsoft Exchange server that they have resident in their organization to push that information to the appropriate person so that they can take action on it. What they're essentially doing is they're essentially taking the cognitive load and pushing it into the organization with these solutions, saying, here, you try and figure it out for me. And we have people inside our business that really don't have the knowledge or experience to understand when I see a post, what am I really looking at it? Or what am I really seeing in this post, and how should I react to it? So every day we see more and more pressure being put on us and more data being thrust upon our organizations. And the challenges just get exponentially more difficult. And with the diversity of the solutions that all of us talk about in these types of sessions, it's extremely difficult to understand where they all fit in the overall mix of what I'm trying to put together. And so customers are really frustrated when we meet with them And they really understand that, you know what, it's not necessarily about just getting better visualization or better this or better that. It's really about synthesizing this information and helping them understand how it can become actionable. So our customers are skeptical today. And when we come in, because we're a relatively new company, we usually come into an environment where we have existing technologies that we have to work with. And so it's not uncommon for them to be very upfront with us and say, listen, of course we want better solutions. Of course we want better data. Who doesn't want better data? Well, you know, what they end up saying is, so what you need to do is you need to explain to me how what you have is different, and you need to quantify how it's different to us. Then, if we really do believe that it is different, then it's something that we'll be willing to invest in. And so what is the industry at large? What's our redemption strategy to try and improve what we're doing today? Well, generally speaking, what you hear a lot of people talk about is I need more data. I need more streaming information. I need Hadoop. I need a big data cluster. I need a way to bring it all together, and that'll be what will give me what I need. Or else I need these really great visualizations, and I can look at different types of tag clouds, or I can look at heat maps, and that's what I need. But in many cases, what we find with these types of solutions is that in many cases they're telling us what we already know. When you do an overlay of population densities and a lot of these heat maps, the answers are pretty obvious. And then what you look at is you have these organizations that say, well, we need is more analytics mashup data. And it's really not more intersection points of all these different data sources. It's really more about better data. And so that's the question. How do we get to better data? And because the path that we're on right now isn't going to give us what we need in order to get the job done effectively. So we need to think about doing it differently. So I want to take a moment now and talk about sentiment. And sentiment, it's obviously a really big word. We're using it all the time in every conversation as it relates to social media or mobile or whatever. And sentiment is, unfortunately, we've been conditioned to think of it basically in two dimensions, thumbs up and thumbs down. Perhaps some people have us looking at it through the lens of love, like, dislike, and hate. But when we look at it, a lot gets kind of bucketed in there, right? We lose the ability to distinguish between the nuances in those communications that are really valuable. And when I push something that goes in as a thumbs up or thumbs down to somebody inside the organization, and I say, here it is, and it's perhaps a false positive, or perhaps there are many different things that are being discussed in that document, to put it on their shoulders to figure out is a hard thing to do. So we lose the ability to get distinction, we lose the ability to get high-quality insights, and it's often very difficult for us to understand what we should take action on of everything that we see, and what's the appropriate action for us to take. So how we get there, and this is really the point of the conversation, is emotions. Understanding emotions are really what give us the ability to get to a level of depth and knowledge that allow us to understand what we need to take action on and how we need to take action on it. When you look at the analysis of emotions, it's not about words, right? We don't use words. I, happy, joy, went baseball game, had fun, right? It's not that simple. So I don't have this simple model of saying, hey, it's just a series of dictionaries that I use to go look up this information. When we talk, we speak emotionally about certain topics. So when we run or create an algorithm to analyze emotions, what we need to look for is not just the state of mind that we're interested in. We need to understand how we got there. We also need to understand, under a certain set of conditions, where are we going to go? So if somebody's frustrated and I do something, where might they go? Will they improve their particular circumstance? Or if I don't do something, where will they go next? When you do the analysis of emotions properly, you're going to understand what their state of mind is on a particular topic that you're interested in understanding. You're going to understand how they arrived at that point, and you're going to understand where they might go in the future based upon what you might do with them. This is the information that becomes very, very actionable. It tells you immediately what you should do or what you should focus on. So unless you get to this level of granularity in your analysis of sentiment, you're forcing the cognitive load on something else. We only have so many cognitive resources as humans, and as businesses, we only have so many cognitive resources. So if we get to the point where we can understand emotions, we're really going to be in a better position as it relates to understanding how we should engage. So obviously, we can understand what's actionable. We can get to a point where we can be predictive in terms of understanding where people are going to go. And it really helps us understand how we need to engage with individuals and groups of individuals much more intelligently. Now, I quickly want to talk about segmentation structures, the things that we're all familiar with today. The world is a simple place, you know, when there's homeostasis and everybody is kind of in their position. I have my A customers, my B customers, and my C customers. Then I have my demographics that I might use to analyze my different segments. As long as, you know, nothing changes, it's all great. But the reality is that there's always change, right? People are always changing their state of mind. Your A customer may not always be an A customer. Your C customer may not always be a C customer. And where we see the industry needing to go is where we're blending our segmentation structures with this real-time information. So I still understand the core of what my business looks like from a consumer standpoint, but I'm blending it with all this real-time information that allows me to be much more engaging, much more relevant with the consumers that I'm working with on a day-to-day basis. And so our customers do wild and wacky things. There's all sorts of great things that we can pull from this information. And to the extent possible, we really need to force ourselves to understand how those thoughts, feelings, and actions that they take every day can be used to drive predictable behaviors, and then how we can use that information to both drive strategy as real-time execution. You're never going to get there with this. You're only going to get there when you really understand emotions. And so my only challenge to the industry is really focus on emotions, do everything you can to try and understand these types of attributes related to how your customers are communicating, because you're going to have a much deeper, more meaningful experience and relationship with them. And then we usually leave our clients with two basic questions, rhetorical, that basically say, if a client walked into your store or came or visited your website and you had their emotional state of mind, would you use that information to engage with them from a promotion standpoint or from an ad serving perspective? And everybody we talk to says, absolutely yes, we would definitely want to do that. And the second thing is, as it relates to market research, how could this information be appended to all the other things that you're doing as it relates to other market research initiatives to essentially improve the results of the analysis that you're performing for your clients today, that you're doing within your own organization. So that's all I have today. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you.
you.
So do we have any questions in the room at all for David? Okay, we've got a couple of questions. I've got a mic in the middle.
Hi, I'm Maya Husar with Alexandra Babbage. I really like your idea of going away from positive and negative conversation sentiment to more of the emotions. It's very much actionable. However, don't you agree the biggest challenge right now, even with the positive negative, is the accuracy of the coding? Looking in a more granular, I think that what you just proposed seems like it will be even bigger issue then.
Yeah, so what we do is we focus on this concept of something called a Turing test, if you're familiar with it. And what you basically do is you take your results of your analysis and you crowdsource it. And what you're essentially doing is you're saying, if I had 15 people, if I threw a comment in the middle, a coded comment in the middle of a table with 15 people, would they agree? And so we base all of our models on this Turing test methodology, where we would have the same conceptual agreement with that same group of people if they were to analyze it. And so what we do when you create models, you typically do some crowdsourcing on the front end to create your studies. You create your analytics algorithms, and then what you do is you take a sample of your data as you're performing your analysis for your clients, and you're crowdsourcing the results to test your accuracy, and then you set up a standard deviation to determine if it falls within what's acceptable. If it falls outside of an acceptable category, you're moving off your mean. Then what you do is you come back and you recalibrate your models. And so it's a consistent, ongoing process that you're using to evaluate what you're doing. But the Turing test and basically mapping up against our ability to not give customers or not have customers be able to distinguish between a human-coded response or a machine-coded response is how we perform our accuracy tests. Great. Any other questions?
Just a polite request, if you're asking a question, if you could just introduce yourself and say who you are and where you're from before you ask a question, that'd be really appreciated.
That's very timely. This is Ronnie Chaudhary from Procter & Gamble.
Hey, Ronnie.
Just had a quick question on how do you define or separate mood from the emotions that you just talked about? Is mood something different, or do you... So
the emotions that we track for right now are the ones that we've listed there. We also do topic and context and a number of other things. So there are organizations like yours that have very specific things that you're interested in the marketplace. And so presence and meaning may be two. And so we don't have a presence and meaning measure. And so our process is pretty specific. What we do is we would sit down with a client that would define what that is. So if you had a mood or you had something that you were interested in, we would define what that is. We would basically create a study around that particular attribute of what it is that we're trying to measure. And then we would create a model around that. Then what we do is we have an engine that we essentially perfect the model using a series of back-end tools that we've created. And we test that with our clients to make sure that we have a clear understanding and we can accurately code and classify that information. Once we have that in a position that we're comfortable with it, then we put it into a big data platform and we run those analytics real time as data streams in. And then we test it, as I just mentioned, from a quality standpoint going forward. So for things that we don't have, we create a study. We could create a very simple, an additional emotional score or something that somebody might want to analyze. And then one last thing we have is you have there's something called liquid designs. So every client can set up a series of liquid designs. So you may have 10 things that you want to measure and only 10 things, and they may be unique. And it could be a combination of our measurements plus your measurements. And then all your data runs through that liquid design for you or your department versus another department that might have a different set of liquid designs.